We're hearing that the number of net permanent and long-term arrivals has reached more than 100,000 a month, increasing pressure on this topic for the Albanese government. Daniel, Claire O'Neill had said previously that she was going to lower the migration targets. Where is this up to, and is this going to happen?
Yes, look, I'd just take a step back on this one and say that Australia's come out of a period where we had 2 years of zero migration. And if you look at the decade or two before that, we were a very high migration OECD country. And I think during that period that served us well by and large. Now, we very much supported the previous government's measures to close the border for the sake of the safety of our country. I think that was the right call. But what it meant is that when we came out of COVID, we had incredible labour shortages right across the board. And so migration numbers were always going to increase from zero to a number that was at least temporarily above trend. And we saw that. Now, it got to the point where it was higher than I think than the economy could cope with, and so the government has put in place measures to bring it back down to a level that is more sustainable. We've already seen some success in relation to university students, for example. Integrity measures in that space have reduced numbers by something in the order of 35,000 people. Now, I think some of the increase in this last month reflects the fact that there are pipeline issues. There are probably a whole bunch of approvals in the pipeline that are seeing their way through into the country. But my understanding is that based upon the numbers we're seeing, we're still on track to see a halving of overall net migration intake by the middle of next year. But it's not the kind of thing you just turn off in one day. It does take a little bit of time to come through because there's a whole bunch of approvals.
Let's bring in Bridget on this. I mean, Daniel ultimately saying there that it was balancing out the years during COVID where there weren't many or any migrants coming here. But hasn't Labor gone even higher than just making up for the lack of migrants during the COVID period?
Yeah, absolutely, Sharri. Look, I've been in Brisbane at an Olympics hearing all day about Labor's failure of infrastructure rollouts for that particular event, and this is an absolute gold medal winning performance by the Labor Party. They've got 100,000 new arrivals this month. Largest number of arrivals in our country's history. Meanwhile, congested city streets and suburbs, particularly Sydney, Brisbane and Melbourne, and they're cutting the infrastructure that's needed to actually accommodate these migrants at the same time. This is happening whilst we've also got the lowest housing starts for over a decade. So I think, Daniel, mate, you don't cut migration by having a record high month this month. It's not on track. If it was on track, it would be going down, not up. That's kind of just a fundamental mathematic fact. The fact is Labor doesn't take this seriously. They haven't been able to take our border issues seriously, whether it's boat arrivals, whether it's handling detainees, or indeed a regular migration program where we're not getting this type of skilled migrants we actually need. We don't get the construction workers and the electricians, the mechanics, etc., that we need to keep our economy going. And the only thing stopping this country going into recession is population growth through migration. So, Daniel, I'm sorry, the talking points say what they say, but you've been sold a pup on this one.
In my opinion, one of the things that is most notable about this is that it wasn't an election policy. Labor never went to the election and said, we're going to have a big Australia, or we're going to have a high migration intake, to even if it was to balance out the lack of migrants under the COVID period. Anyway, Daniel Molino, Bridget McKenzie, thank you both so much for joining me.